down by a U.S. warship in the Strait of Hormuz in what President Trump calls a defensive measure against the rogue regime.
Are simmering tensions about to reach an all-out boiling point? We're live with the breaking developments.
These left-wing politicians, people on the media, they go crazy with their outrage. They couldn't even pass a resolution condemning anti-Semitism by itself.
Marco Rubio sounding off on the left's selective outrage when it comes to the president.
But even as President Trump condemns the "send her back" chant heard around the country, will everyone see eye to eye? And a war of words erupting in one liberal city.
Everybody talking about this one. Apparently words like manhole and man-made are so offensive to some people, they need to be banned. Yeah, I'm out too. Bye. Oh, Fox and Friends First continues right now. Everybody. We hope everybody out there as well. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Friday morning. I'm Todd Pyro in for Rob Schmidt.
And I'm Jillian Mealy. As always, thank you for starting your day with us. Let's get straight to this Fox News alert now. Iran denies the U.S. shot down one of its drones over international waters as tensions reach a fever pitch.
This all comes just hours after President Trump confirmed the attack himself. Aisha Husni here to break it all down. Good morning, Aisha.
Good morning. Yeah, this is pretty bizarre, right? The country denying any strike down. In a tweet, the country's deputy foreign minister says, quote, "We have not lost any drone in the Strait of Hormuz nor anywhere else. I am worried that USS Boxer has shot down their own UAS by mistake." The president, of course, has a different story. He says around 10 a.m. local time Thursday, an Iranian drone was spotted within 1,000 yards of the USS Boxer warship in the Strait of Hormuz. The drone apparently ignored repeated calls to stand down, and that is when Marines, they took it down themselves using this right here, new pictures coming in, specialized electronic jamming equipment to take that drone down. A Pentagon spokesperson says the ship took defensive action against the UAS to ensure the safety of the ship and its crew. Well, now the president is calling on the rest of the world to help protect the Gulf.
This is the latest of many provocative and hostile actions by Iran against vessels operating in international waters.
So this is, of course, now refueling tensions after Iran shot down a U.S. drone on June 20th. Remember that, claiming that it crossed into territory lines. And the country on Sunday captured a foreign tanker from the UAE, claiming the crew of 12 was smuggling oil. The State Department demanding the release of that crew. Iran must cease this illicit activity, they say, and release the reportedly seized crew and vessel immediately. And this is also very important because the Strait of Hormuz is really the only sea passageway for a good chunk of the world's oil. So this is going to continue on.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Aisha, thank you for that update.
Fox News senior strategic analyst General Jack Keane says he's never seen Iran in such a defensive position.
He says that proves the president's strategy is working.
The leadership in Iran is back on their heels, literally, for the first time that I have ever seen. And what we need to do is not overreact, be patient, because the strategy we have in place is working. And we don't need to go up the ladder of escalation with the Iranians in a way that they would love to take us there. We have to be careful about what we're doing. Our strategy, our offensive strategy is working, and don't fall into a provocation trap that they're setting for us.
Iran has shown signs it may be willing to negotiate a deal with the U.S. over its ballistic missile program.
To another Fox News alert now. Tourists beware. ISIS is vowing to spread terror in Tunisia. The terror group calling on its followers to launch deadly attacks at the peak of tourist season in a new propaganda video. Now, this comes just weeks after 2 suicide bombings rocked Tunisia's capital, killing an officer and a civilian. And in 2015, the militant group was behind 2 massive attacks, killing 60 people, one targeting a popular museum. An American citizen suspected of joining ISIS is now in the U.S. to be prosecuted for allegedly fighting in Syria. The Pentagon has not named the suspect, and it's unclear where they are being held. The U.S. has led a global push to have more ISIS fighters sent to their home countries to face trial.
Jeffrey Epstein will remain behind bars after a federal judge denied him bail.
Only by taking away the freedom of Jeffrey Epstein can we restore the freedom of these victims. They have been living in fear and intimidation since the day they were abused by him, and now he is in jail.
In court, the judge rejecting Epstein's request to live under house arrest in Manhattan, saying he presented a high flight risk and a danger to the community. Epstein pleaded not guilty to sex trafficking and conspiracy charges last week. He faces up to 45 years in prison if convicted. The Dominican Republic adopting new safety measures after a string of tourist deaths. The nation's tourism ministry will now require hotels to detail their food handling protocols and suppliers and post emergency information clearly in every guest room. It will also set up an emergency center to help tourists connect with their families and their governments. The new measures come as 14 American tourists have died since last summer. Meantime, this week, former President Bill Clinton was seen vacationing on the island, even playing a round of golf.
Two FDNY heroes who responded to the 9/11 terror attacks have died. Richard Driscoll and Kevin Nolan both succumbing to illnesses linked to Ground Zero. Driscoll becomes the 200th New York firefighter to die. The Vietnam veteran recognized for his bravery 5 times over his 32-year career. He was 73. Nolan, described as wonderful and extremely popular, leaves behind a wife and 3 children. He was 58. The tragic deaths come as senators reach a deal to vote next week on a bill that would ensure the 9/11 compensation fund never runs out of money.
Prayers to the families.
Yep.
President Trump plans to nominate Gene Scalia as his new labor secretary, the son of the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. The president tweeting in part, quote, Gene has led a life of great success in the legal and labor field and is highly respected. Trump's previous labor secretary, Alexander Acosta, resigned last week amid criticism for his role in a secret plea deal that allowed Jeffrey Epstein to avoid federal sex trafficking charges.
You know, since Rob's not here today, Todd, there's no one complaining about the heat. He was all up in arms yesterday complaining about that heat. Janice Dean knows this for herself.
I'm actually not going to complain because I don't want to upset Janice, because she said something very nice to me yesterday when I was giving a tour. She said, nobody's better at giving tours than Todd, so I'm not going to complain.
Excellent tour guide. Is that why Rob took today off?
Yes.
Because I gave him a hard time yesterday?
Or it could be the 115 feels like temperature tomorrow here in the city.
What? I mean, no joke. It is going to be one of the warmest days this year, possibly one of the warmest days we've felt in some time. Let's take a look at the maps. And by the way, we're outside because it's the Summer Concert Series, and we have one of my favorites, Phil Vassar, coming out. He's going to play for the entire show, I hear. So if you're at 48th and 6, you want to come out. Here's what we're dealing with. Partly sunny. I'm going to say mostly sunny just because that's me. It's actually quite nice out, but look at what's going to happen later on today. Heat index. This is what it's going to feel like with the humidity, well over 100 degrees for so many people. So that's going to be dangerous heat. It's going to linger into Saturday. And then as we get into next week, it'll start to, relent is, I don't know if that's the best word. It's going to cool off, relatively speaking. But for now, it's going to be very hot. People need to take precautions. These are your forecast highs without the humidity. And you can see as you look at Kansas City and Chicago, by Sunday, their heat is going to break. And then as we get into the Northeast, Monday and Tuesday, we'll start to see those temperatures relax. But for the meantime, you want to practice all these heat safety tips. Plenty of water. Don't leave children or pets in the vehicles. Check on the elderly. I would say, for the most part, you should be indoors in the air conditioning, and know where your cooling centers are going to be, my friends, because we could have some problems with the power outages. Here's your forecast today. 93 here in New York, but it's going to feel well over 100 degrees for a lot of these big cities, including D.C. Summer Concert Series coming up today on Fox and Friends, brought to you by Sandals. We have Famous Dave's here as well. Love barbecue for breakfast, so you got to come down and see us.
They have the best corn muffins.
They're so good.
Oh my
Do.
gosh, they're
so good.
They have the best everything.
Yes. Janice, thank you.
Soon.
All right, time now is 10 minutes after the hour. They're at the center of controversy here in the U.S., but now squad members Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib are making headlines in Israel for targeting the Jewish state.
So you don't regret your words either?
I do not.
Would you like to make it clear that you were not anti-Semitic?
Oh, certainly not.
Both want to visit. Should they be allowed in? David Rubin says even though there's precedent to keep them out, it actually could hurt Israel to close that door.
And it's no graduation robe. This stubborn senior's portraits are going viral.
Amazing.
We're going to tell you why he decided to ditch the button down for a bathrobe. You don't want to miss it. We're coming back on Friday.
Words either.
I do not. I
Would you
really
like to
want
make it
them
clear that you are not anti-Semitic?
Oh, certainly not.
There's a kind of a calming feeling I always tell folks. When I think of the Holocaust and the tragedy of the Holocaust, it was my ancestors, Palestinians, who lost their land and some lost their lives.
As Democrats target President Trump for his tweets, two members of the squad are facing backlash of their own for what many believe to be anti-Semitic comments.
And now Congresswomen Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib are backing a resolution that allows Americans to boycott Israel. But they're planning to visit Israel themselves in the coming weeks. So the question many are asking is, should they be allowed to visit?
Joining us live to weigh in, former mayor of Shiloh, Israel, and author of Trump and the Jews, David Rubin. Sir, thanks for being here. Before we get to the ultimate question of why we have you on today, should they be allowed in, I just want to get your thoughts on, you have Tlaib talking about the calmness of the Holocaust. You have Ilhan Omar making the most ironic and impossible, incompatible comparison in the history of comparisons, comparing Israel, composed of Jewish people, and Nazi Germany. You know, what do you make of all this?
Well, I prefer not to get into name calling. I really like to look at the facts. Okay, Rashida Tlaib does not know what she's talking about, or she's being very insincere. During the Holocaust, the Sheikh of Jerusalem, the leader, the supreme leader of all of the Arabs in the land of Israel, Sheikh Faisal al-Husseini, met with Adolf Hitler, met with Adolf Eichmann, and encouraged them to create concentration camps in the land of Israel, that they were then calling Palestine. This is the fact, and that is not what's being said here. So it disturbs me very much. I also find the comparison between Nazi Germany and concentration camps and immigrant camps on the border absolutely obscene. Those illegal immigrants are not escaping anything resembling a Holocaust or any kind of slaughter. 6 million Jews were slaughtered during the Holocaust. I would like to hear Mrs. Tlaib and her cohort, Ilhan Omar, speak a little bit about that.
Sir, what do you think about this boycott that they're pushing for, if you will? And do you think that they should be allowed to visit, I mean, with everything that's going on, everything that they've said, all the comments that they've made?
Well, we have a law in Israel that was passed a short time ago that says that no one who works for and supports the boycott of Israel should be allowed into the country. That's what they call the BDS, the boycotting of Israel. I absolutely do not think they should be allowed in the country. I don't think they should be given a platform. They could have their platform at the airport to spew out some of their hatred, but I do not support giving them a platform for several days here in Israel.
But you do fear, to a certain extent, though, and it has been said by some critics, that refusing them entry could play right into their hands, correct?
No, I don't think so. It's perfectly understandable that a country would have a law saying that people who advocate and work towards the boycott of a country are enemies of the country and should not be allowed in. The United States doesn't allow enemies of the United States to come in, avowed enemies, public enemies that work legislatively to boycott the United States. I don't think that Israel should have to do that either, and I'm certainly not ashamed to say it, and I am not in favor of giving them a platform.
Before we let you go, I'm wondering what's the reaction over there?
The reaction to the words of Ilhan Omar and
Yes.
Rashida Tlaib?
Yes.
Well, it has gotten some publicity here. Look, we're familiar with anti-Semitism. We're familiar with all the anti-Semitism through history. It's very, very disturbing to see it in the Democratic Party, the party of Harry Truman that was once very pro-Israel. And I have to tell you that You know, what disturbs me even more than Tlaib and Omar and the things that they say against Israel and against the Jews, what disturbs me even more is the silence of the leadership of the Democratic Party. I would like to know where Chuck Schumer is. He's kind of gone into hiding ever since these women have been so outspoken.
All right. David Rubin, thank you so very much for your time. Obviously, this is such a talker here in the States and certainly is making its way overseas. Thank you for your time.
You're
welcome.
19 minutes after the hour now. So who is more competent at work, men or women?
Speak to your boss.
No, she is the boss.
I am?
Yes.
The new study that'll make you give your coworkers a second look today.
Thank you, producers, for not giving me that story. I want to say nothing on it. I like this. It's one of the most highly anticipated debuts of the summer. Disney's star-studded remake of The Lion King is out today. And Jillian, when we do movies, who do we go to? Who's our man? $1 an hour. That's more than double the current rate. Lawmakers voting along party lines in a 231 to 199 vote to boost the federal minimum wage for the first time in a decade. The new rate would be phased in over a 6-year period, but allows for the increases to stop if jobs are lost as a result. But it's unlikely the Republican-controlled Senate is going to pass this.
Todd's favorite story of the day.
Nothing.
They say anything boys can do, girls can do better, right?
I'm out.
But who is more competent at work?
Hello.
May I please speak to your boss?
No, she is the boss.
I am?
Yes.
In a series of national polls, people were asked about their opinions of 3 traits in men and women: competence, affection, and ambition. Most said they believe women are equally or even more intelligent than men. They are still viewed, though, as apparently less ambitious. That is insane. Who wrote this? Todd's literally just sitting here.
Nothing. Let's give the time to McCarthy. The most highly anticipated movie of the year, The Lion King, is out today.
You must take your place in the circle of life.
Oh man, the star-studded remake is expected to be a hit. But should you bring your kids this weekend? Fox News contributor Kevin McCarthy is here with his review. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, good morning to you, Todd and Jillian. Yeah, this is a film obviously very anticipated, as you mentioned, and Jon Favreau is directing it. Now, Favreau is probably most known for doing Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, Elf, and he also did the Jungle Book live-action remake. Now, it's important to note The Lion King is not a live-action remake. It does look photorealistic. You're obviously seeing visuals that look insanely real. The backgrounds look real. But in the movie itself, there's actually only one real photographed environment. Everything else you're seeing is actually computer-generated effects. Now, the movie itself is, in my opinion, very well done, beautifully cast in regards to the voice acting. To me, Timon and Pumbaa, played by Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner, are the scene stealers in this movie. They are so funny. And the big question is, why was this remade? And I get it. You know, it's a remake. It's a shot-for-shot remake of some of the same scenes you've seen before. But the visual updates, to me, are what made it so amazing. Also, Beyonce has a brand new song in it called Spirit. This film really does work for, in my opinion, the new generation, people who love the Disney films, going back, maybe taking their kids to see this movie. I will say one cool thing: James Earl Jones, he returns as Mufasa. So this is the same actor. He's 88 years old, redoing his sequences as Mufasa. Now, if you listen closely in the movie, you actually hear, it's probably hard to tell, but there is one yell that they went back and grabbed from the earlier recordings that Mufasa does in this movie, but all the lines are actually redone and new by James Earl Jones. Simba is played by Donald Glover, as I mentioned, Seth Rogen, Billy Eichner. Chiwetel Ejiofor does an amazing job as Scar. We all know Scar was played by Jeremy Irons back in the 90s, and it's an iconic voice. He makes it his own, Chiwetel Ejiofor. So to me, it really worked. I really, really enjoyed it. I was very hesitant at first about seeing it because I was a little concerned about why we needed it, but for me, it grabbed me, and the songs are amazing. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I do have some issues with some of the voice acting, but overall, I really, really enjoyed the movie. A 4 out of 5, definitely worth seeing.
But 4 out of 5 only because of those issues you just talked about? Like, as a whole, you like it and how it compares to the original?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. At the end of the day, the original is going to be the original. It's a classic. It's one of the best animated movies of all time. But there are things in this film, I thought some of the scenes felt a little bit longer, and I thought that Beyonce did an amazing job singing, but I didn't think her voice acting dialogue delivery was as strong as everybody else's in the film. But overall, I thought it was a 4 out of 5. It's a solid, solid film.
Kevin McCarthy, thank you very much. Quick public service. Everybody this weekend that sees a movie is going to want to raise their pet in the air and go, ha, don't do that. We had to take my dog to the vet because we hurt her back and she was vomiting a lot. Please don't do that. I'm serious. Public service announcement for your pet.
Okay, Kevin, thank you.
It's serious.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, McCarthy. Try to come back from that.
28
McCarthy.
minutes after the hour.
Acting DHS Secretary Kevin McAleenan under fire from the left at a tense House hearing on conditions for migrants.
None of us would have our children in that position.
Do you think that the policy of child separation could have contributed to a dehumanizing culture within CBP?
We are live in Washington with this fiery testimony and the shocking new numbers in to fight to secure our borders.
And it's Friday. That means the All-American Summer Concert Series about to kick off on Fox Square. Phil Vassar, great show. He's going to play all morning long. It's going to be great. Don't miss it. Its drone in the Strait of Hormuz. This denial comes just hours after President Trump said the USS Boxer took defensive action when a drone came within 1,000 yards of the warship.
Overnight, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo arrives in Argentina for a counterterrorism summit. The visit coincides with the 25th anniversary of the Buenos Aires Jewish Community Center bombing that killed 85 people. Pompeo hopes the summit will form a common front with other governments to fight against militant groups in the Middle East.
And the best story of the day, NASA celebrating the Apollo 11's 50th anniversary at Cape Canaveral today with a webcast saluting the mission's heroes. In D.C., the Smithsonian will unveil a recap of the mission projected on a 40-foot wide screen and the Washington Memorial. How cool is that? The show's going to be held tonight and tomorrow.
Acting Homeland Security Secretary Kevin McAleenan standing his ground to a group of fiery, angry Democrats on Capitol Hill over issues at the border.
Griff Jenkins was there, joins us now live from Washington with the left's grilling of McAleenan. Griff, good morning.
It was indeed, Todd and Jillian, good morning. It was the hottest scene in Washington really yesterday. The acting chief pushing back on Democrats, making the case that despite overwhelming challenges and a lack of congressional support, DHS has made significant strides in securing the border and protecting migrants. But an unsatisfied chairman, Elijah Cummings, was lashing out.
You feel like you're doing a great job, right? Is that what you're saying?
We're doing our level best in a very challenging.
What does that mean? What does that mean when a child is sitting in their own feces, can't take a shower? Come on, man. What's that about? None of us would have our children in that position.
McAleenan informed the committee that more than 800,000 migrants have been apprehended or encountered crossing illegally this fiscal year. And they have reduced the number of unaccompanied children at the border from 2,700 down to under 350 with an average of fewer than 35 hours in CBP custody.
There's no one defecating in a Mylar blanket. We are taking care of these children thanks to the resources we finally have. They're moving very quickly through our facilities to Health and Human Services to a better situation. And I'd be happy to show you that at the border, Mr. Chairman.
Well, afterwards, we caught up with the chairman who expressed cautious optimism that things are moving in the right direction.
I think the secretary has now gotten the picture. We must do better. We have no choice but to do better.
Next up, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is leading a delegation of more than a dozen Senate Democrats to tour the southern border of migrant facilities today in McAllen, Texas. They plan to hold an afternoon press conference. We'll see what they have to say. Todd, Jillian.
Griff, thanks for going to that. Obviously, there's a continuing disconnect between all sides on this, and who knows if it's going to be resolved anytime soon. Griff, we appreciate it.
In other news this morning, at least 3 of the MS-13 gang members charged in a series of brutal killings had current deportation orders. 5 were trying to use our asylum system to stay in the country. That's according to Acting Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, Ken Cuccinelli.
It's very hard to reconcile. The same cities that scream at ICE for enforcing the law, doing their job, are the same ones who harbor these folks, many of whom are just evil and vicious people.
22 MS-13 members were charged in connection to 7 murders in California. Nearly all of them were here illegally.
Oral arguments set for today in the DNC's case claiming Russian spies and the Trump campaign conspired to disrupt the 2016 election. The lawsuit names a number of foreign actors and associates of the Trump campaign. The DNC claiming that the president's ties to Russian associates provided a, quote, fertile ground for a conspiracy.
All right, this story might knock your socks off. One California city going to the extreme in an effort to be more inclusive.
You said give up before, and I give up. I mean, what more? Berkeley City Council members voting to nix gender-specific words like manhole and manpower by replacing them with maintenance hole and human effort.
Many people just can't believe this change. Honestly, listen to this.
On the ground that's covering a hole that goes through the sewer. They come up with these cockamamie things all the time.
What was your first reaction when you heard about it?
I was just like, come on. Like, enough is enough.
Yes, many agree with you, sir. The city will also replace gendered pronouns he and she with they.
The mastermind behind the ordinance, I'm going to assume it was that kid in the video. Probably shouldn't do that, but if it is, that was a 23-year-old city council member. He needs some real things to do.
Yeah. So many people have been commenting on this. Todd, why don't you start?
Yeah, Virginia on Facebook says, quote, so embarrassing. Who thinks of this weird stuff? Seems like some are trying to erase anything with a subject pertaining to men.
Nick on Twitter says, California, where they care more about straws and words than the homeless.
And Feliciano on Facebook says, I love this. How about manicure, maneuver, manipulate, maniac? You guys can have that one. Manslaughter. For once, I think of something. Please think of something that will improve people's lives.
I posted this story on Twitter yesterday, and it got so many comments. I mean, people are just going nuts over this.
Was anybody on the pro side of?
Zero. 37 minutes after the hour. 50 years ago, the U.S. landed on the moon. It's one of humanity's greatest achievements. But the New York Times claims it just wasn't inclusive enough, and the internet is firing back.
And the 17-year-old going viral for this photo shoot. You, sir, are an American treasure. Why he decided to take his senior pics in a bathrobe.
Carly's going to tell us. Slamming Democrats, wow, for what he calls selective outrage when it comes to President Trump.
So here's how this has been working. The president says something and people cringe because you don't like it. But then the other side, these left-wing politicians, people on the media, they go crazy with their outrage. They couldn't even pass a resolution condemning anti-Semitism by itself.
Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7, Sirius XM 115, here with the online reaction. Carly, take it away.
Hey, good morning, guys. So Florida Senator Marco Rubio says enough is enough. He's accusing Democrats of feigning outrage and believes they throw around the accusation of racism too much. So this whole situation, President Trump's feud with the squad, has a lot of people talking on social media. This person on Instagram is blaming both sides, saying many Americans are tired of Congress passing a condemnation resolution does nothing for citizens. It is not what I believe the majority of people elected them for, which seems to be spending time doing nothing. Another person, an Instagram user as well, says you were absolutely correct, Senator Rubio. The Democrats condemn the president but fail to condemn Antifa for their act of terror. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot more reaction coming in today as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
This next one. It kind of is embarrassing for the New York Times to slam what is a uniquely American thing, one of the proudest moments in our history.
Well, to mark the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landing, a New York Times op-ed columnist celebrated the Soviet space program for its diversity, saying the space race was a prime opportunity to signal the USSR's commitment to equality. After putting the first man in space in 1961, the Soviets went on to send the first woman, the first Asian man, and the first black man into orbit, all years before the Americans would follow suit. Here's the key. Under socialism, she says, a person of even the humblest origins could make it all the way up. So actress Patricia Heaton noticed an article the New York Times wrote saying the New York Times was designed by men for men as well. Another Twitter user chiming in saying they don't want people to value America and its system and see it as special, otherwise people would rally to protected. So if you do want to celebrate the Apollo 11 moon landing, it happened 50 years ago tomorrow.
All right, so one person you probably don't want to ever anger is your mother. And apparently this teenager did just that by taking these photos you're going to show us.
Yeah, that's right. No suit and tie for this high school senior. A brave student, 17-year-old student going viral for taking his senior pictures in his bathrobe. Evan Dennison showed up to the photo session with a backpack filled with clothes his mom picked out for the special occasion, but decided to go with something different, claiming it would make him a legend. That was his reason. So his cousin is a professional photographer. Her name is Tiffany Clark. She was forced to take these pictures. He has become a legend because they have been liked over 232,000 times on Facebook. But mom is ultimately going to get her way because he promised that he'd take more appropriate photos for the living room.
We have to get him on the show. Can we get him on the show for next week?
Have to.
Look at him.
In the robe with his mom. Come on, we got to make this happen.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Carly. Special delivery. Republicans think Democrats should be speaking up to defend the Stars and Stripes.
So they sent 73 American flags to Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and others across the country. RNC spokesperson Liz Harrington is joining us live with a wake-up call for the left.
But first, someone not wearing a bathrobe. Let's check in with Steve Doocy to see what's coming up on Fox and Friends. Hey, Steve.
I thought I should put on a necktie for the TV show. Yeah, come on by. Fox and Friends starts in about 15 minutes. The people making the racket back there, that's the drummer for Phil Vassar. He's going to be our performer for the All-American Summer Concert Series because it's a Friday in the summer. Come on down. Not only will you hear a free show, but we'll feed you breakfast as well. Also, last Friday we had Rush Limbaugh on talking about this incredible success of his Betsy Ross t-shirt. He's going to be dropping by in the 8 o'clock hour to update us. You're not going to believe how many he has sold to help the folks at Tunnel for Towers. Also, we're going to have the CBP Deputy Commissioner Robert Perez talking about trouble at our southern border. Laura Trump is going to be with us. And on Fridays, that's right, Geraldo Rivera. Plus, you see this video of this pint-sized coach going viral? Known as Coach Drake, now an internet sensation after losing his cool and getting into a dust-up. Finally, there's the video. He's pretending he's a grown-up umpire.
Yes.
He even tosses baseball bats everywhere. We're going to talk to the coach and parent coming up. And as I said a minute ago, the All-American Summer Concert Series heats up with country star Phil Vassar, brought to you by our friends at Sandals, the world's only 5-star luxury-included resorts. All right, it's going to be fun today.
It is.
It's going to be awesome.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Steve.
You bet.
We're coming right back.